You're listening to Everybody Pulls the Tarp, the go-to podcast for high performers. I'm Andrew Moses. Each week, you'll hear my thought-provoking conversations with Olympians, pro athletes, CEOs, elite coaches, best-selling authors, and other high performers to uncover their secrets to success. Get ready to be inspired each week when we talk about leadership, teamwork, work ethic, and more. Are you ready? Let's go. Hi, everyone. This week, my guest is Appalachian State University men's basketball head coach Dustin Kerns. In his first 3 seasons at App State, Dustin led the team to 3 consecutive winning seasons, turning around a program that had 8 consecutive losing seasons prior to his arrival. Last season, Dustin led App State to the program's first ever Sun Belt tournament title. The team also reached the NCAA tournament for the first time since 2001. And check this out. During Dustin's tenure, App State has 18 comeback wins from a halftime deficit, which ties them for 3rd most in the nation. I've been curious to ask Dustin about his team's remarkable resilience and never give up attitude. And I've also wanted to explore the mindsets, tools, and techniques powering the turnaround he's leading at App State. Dustin and I sat down in early November on the morning of App State's first game of the 2022-2023 college basketball season. Our conversation is jam-packed with practical lessons and big ideas that will help you lead the people in your life to big success. So, let's pull the tarp and get straight to Dustin Kerns. Welcome to Everybody Pulls the Tarp, Coach.
Andrew, thanks for having me on. I've always been impressed by the pull the tarp mantra. I think it's brilliant, and I love your story, and I'm honored to be on here.
Well, it's an honor to sit down with you. Coach, where I want to begin, your team at App State has 18 comeback wins from a halftime deficit during your tenure. That's tied for 3rd most in the country. I'm curious, where do you think that comes from, that type of resiliency and kind of comeback spirit on your squads?
Well, first of all, it starts with the head coach can't get us ready to play, and we're down at half all the time. I mean, I've told our team that that's a good stat, but it's a stat I would like to change at some point, that we're not trailing at the half. However, it's just competitive. It's college basketball. Basketball life is adversity. It's how you respond to it. And there's so many moments in a game. Obviously, we found ourselves down 18 times at the half and came back and won, which is a terrific stat. Each year, Andrew, I show our team a video of a rat fighting cats. And the reason I show that is it's this little tiny ugly little thing, and there's these 4 cats, and it ends up fighting it off. And so I always say that's what I want our team to look like. We might not be the biggest, we might not be the strongest, but we're going to fight you all the way to the end. And I also show our team a video of some of the most amazing, unbelievable comebacks in college basketball history. And just to illustrate on both sides of the basketball, if you're up or down, the game's not over. And so you got to keep playing. And so just trying to develop that sort of mindset, for our guys and for our program, really, that, hey, listen, next play mentality. And the game's not over until it's over. And so I certainly think, trying to build that mindset has helped.
Coach, that's so fascinating. And there's so much there I want to get into, but I'm curious, where do you think that comes from for you? Is that something that was instilled in you at an early age, or is it just something that's always been a part of you, that resilience, that next play mentality?
Yeah, I mean, I think from coaching, I wasn't a guy that was in coaching that was born on third base. I've had this, scrap and claw and start at the very bottom. Not that this is shared as any other sort of story. It's just the reality of it. I was 27 before I made more than $5,000 in this profession and didn't have full-time benefits and things like that, and was married. So my point is, I had to scrap and claw and fight from the bottom up in this profession. I hope our team and program takes on that personality sometimes, that, hey, listen, we're going to roll our sleeves up and do it the old-fashioned way, and we're going to work, and we're not going to be counted out, per se.
Coach, when you're recruiting and looking for players, obviously you're looking for players that are good at basketball, but are there things you're looking for on the recruiting trail that tell you they may fit that mold of resilience and next play mentality and that scrappiness that, have become essentially a fabric of a Dustin Kerns program?
Yeah, I think we really try to identify, and certainly none of us are perfect, but I think we really try to identify through many, many conversations with people outside of their circle. It may be an opposing coach. It might be, somebody that, if we recruit guys that have jobs, I always like that. We call their employers, we call their people, and hey, what is this kid like on a daily basis? Does he show up on time? Things like that, just to try to identify the habits. Well, no one's perfect, and I don't want our players to even try to be perfect. Perfect doesn't exist. I'm not perfect. I'm going to make some mistakes. But, those are some things that we really try to, we try to just have a lot of conversations with the recruit, their family, their circle, but also some people that maybe have had interactions to try to identify. I think that in recruiting, and one of the hardest things to predict is really two things: how they're going to respond to adversity and how quickly they'll buy in. I think those things are really, really hard to predict. So we try to, ask a lot of questions. We try to talk about App State, we try to talk about our program, but we also spend a lot of time, asking the right questions that can hopefully reveal some answers.
Do you know pretty quickly, once you get the player on campus and into the program, do you know pretty quickly if you got the answer to those questions right? Can they deal with adversity? Can they buy in quickly?
I think sometimes, and I think that, but it's everybody's on a different race, and I think that, sometimes guys learn quicker than others. Some kids learn different ways. And as a coach, you've got to really identify how you're going to pull greatness out of this person and what's the best method, because everybody's different. And so I have seen kids take longer, and that's okay. Once again, everybody's running a different race. But I think that there are times where you can kind of see early on, like, hey, this kid's who we anticipated them being. But also, I do believe people can change. I've seen it. And, sometimes you hear, people can't change. Yes, they can. And if they're in an environment, a daily atmosphere that is about those sort of things, they will gravitate. And so I do think that even though maybe they get in there and it's an adjustment for some, it's our coaches to help them and remind them and give them that daily, encouragement or daily reminder of why this is important. And because I think that it's a mindset to train your mind to, to move on as the next play, to be positive, to be poised, to be prepared. And I think that, certainly training the mind takes some time sometimes. But, back to your question, I think that sometimes yes, and sometimes as a coach, we've got to have some patience, and we've got to help and do our part to help pull that greatness and growth mindset and, quote, mental toughness and the energy and the confidence out of them.
What have you learned as a leader with patience? For example, let's take that concept of patience and being patient. How have you developed that patience over your years in coaching? Is it better today than it was 5 years ago?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. I think that as coaches, I don't know if any of us are naturally patient when it comes to, we're in such a bottom line profession when it comes to just winning. And sometimes the conditional support can be impatient. And so, I think that you've got to rely on that unconditional support as a coach sometimes. You've got to really, learn to just ignore the noise, and because there's always going to be noise. And the best way I can describe it for the people wanting to be head coaches is you're at the beach and the waves keep coming. We all go to the beach. You could sit there and the waves are going to come all day. It's those unnecessary big waves that you can kind of put yourself on, or the people around you can put yourself on, then you have to eliminate, because the waves are not going to stop coming. The waves are going to keep coming. And so I think that if you can train yourself as a head coach to not put yourself, your staff, your family, those unconditional support people put you on unnecessary waves, then it allows you to be more patient. It allows you to just have a little bit more of a peace of mind, because I think as a head coach, peace of mind is very, very important. And the less that as a coach you're concerned about what your players care about, the better off your peace of mind can be. And I know that sometimes can be difficult, but I would say I have got more patient, but the profession hasn't gotten more patient. And we see it in all sports now, all football, baseball, basketball, all things. The conditional support is maybe not as patient. And so it's a really difficult balance. But the waves are going to keep coming every day. The waves are not going to stop coming. But those big waves that maybe you don't have to put yourself on can allow yourself to be more patient.
It's so fascinating, Coach, and I can visualize exactly what you're describing there, that scenario at the beach. And like you said, the profession, it seems like every day gets less patient, and you've got to stay patient and get more patient. Plus, nowadays it seems like everybody on Twitter or everybody on social media, everybody in the building is an expert coach, it seems, and everybody, wants to second guess and thinks they have all the answers. How do you balance getting enough information and input into your program, but filtering out the noise? Like you used that phrase noise before. How do you just balance, making sure you're open-minded to inputs, but being true to yourself, filtering out the noise?
Yeah, I've got a great coaching staff. I've got a great administration. And, I think that you've got to, and I'm big on that. Like I get feedback from our staff and things like that every day because I value it. They're very good coaches. They're very good people. They're very good leaders. Administration, same. I value their input. I trust their input. And sometimes as a coach, you need that to maybe address some blind spots or to things like that, or to complement some weaknesses and things like that. I think that it's really, really important as a coach to not overcoach. And I really try to remind myself constantly, and I talk to our staff a little bit about like, hey, let's make sure we're not overcoaching. And so our players can have a loose, free, confident mindset when they're out there playing, because basketball's so fast. It's just so fast. Next play. There's not been a game in the history of basketball that a team has made all their shots. No one's went 72 for 72 from the field, 18 for 18, and they didn't turn the ball over. And there's never been a perfect game. And so we've got to train ourselves and prepare ourselves that it's not going to be perfect. And you have to really have that mindset of, in those moments, to not overcoach an individual or a team, so their mind is not clouded, because I think we could stop something every play, and that's not how the game is played. The game's not played with stoppage every play. The game's played up and down, up and down, up and down, and it's fast. And so I think as coaches, we talk about a lot of time, hey, let's not make sure that makes sense to us, but is it going to make sense to our players in the moment? That's the most important thing. And I think that if you can train your mind, now going back to the outside noise and things, I think as coaches, we're all pleasers. I mean, who's not, right? Like, who doesn't want to make other people happy? But you got to understand, as a coach, you got to be self-aware that win or lose, you could win by 30 and someone's going to be upset with you, whether it's a parent, a player, a player's coach. Like, someone out there is going to think that I could have done my job better. And I understand that. And I'm self-aware of that. However, you've got to have a strong mind to just stay focused about, and I always just have a saying that I always say to myself, and I'm not saying I'm right when I say this, but as a coach, you've got to, I always say, hey, if I listen to all these people, I'm going to be sitting with them. And I always just kind of remind myself, hey, listen, do what you believe in, treat people the right way, communicate, all those things that we really talk about, but ignore the noise, because there's always going to be noise. there's always going to be noise. I would think that Nick Saban's been one of the most successful coaches in all of sports forever. They just lost to LSU in overtime at LSU, and I'm sure there's a ton of noise out there. He's unbelievable about it. He's not listening to that, and so that's poison, as he would say. But I think as coaches, it's easier said than done to not sometimes hear it, but there's a difference between hearing it and listening to it. And because we all want to please people, we all want all of our fans and all of our fan base and all of our alumni and all of our players and parents. We all want, man, we all want to be liked. That's that's in any facet in life. But as a coach, you have to understand and be self-aware that that's not realistic. And we asked our players sometimes to deal in reality. As coaches, we have to deal in reality that, hey, someone's going to be upset. But if I listen to everybody outside my noise, I'm going to be sitting in the stands with them.
It's an important way to look at it. You talked, Coach, about the difference between hearing and listening, two distinctly different things. I want to go back to the point you made about overcoaching and not overcoaching. Or how do you determine what players need more coaching or less coach? How do you kind of regulate and moderate your communication style and your approach for different players?
Well, I think you just got to continue to observe and learn, and you've got to have constant interaction to try to figure out what's best for each individual player. Because some player, they're going to learn differently. It's as your coach, it's your job as a coach and coaching staff to figure out how to pull greatness out of that person. And is that a private meeting? Is that a film session? Is that an example? Is that an article? What is it best for them? Is it demonstration? And so I think that's a job as a coach to how to manage and discover different personalities, different circles, not only from your players, but also your staff. I mean, we're talking about players, but you got to understand as a coach how your staff interacts and how your staff can learn and how your staff can feel ownership into your program and give them that. And I think that that's a really, big part of it. Is I've spoken to people that want to aspire to be head coaches. I've talked about the wave thing, but one of the biggest things, you talked about it as soon as we got on about the X's and O's. One of the biggest things of being a head coach is, can you handle the disappointment of others? Can you handle the criticism of others? We just talked about it, but from fans, officials, so many people, because it's going to be there. And I think that's a big part of the job, being able to handle the disappointment and criticism of other people. And I'm not saying it's all easy sometimes, but it's a process that you've got to. Everybody thinks I'm going to become head coach and I'm just going to get my little playbook out and I'm going to draw some plays. And listen, I've got, we've got this defense. We got, everybody thinks I'm going to run this, I'm going to run that. And then they go, boom, hold up. The art of coaching is, how can you manage 25 different personalities between your staff, support staff, players? How can you get those people on the same page so they're pulling in another direction? We do an exercise as a team where we push a car up a road. The only way to get the car up the road is everybody's pushing in the same direction. If one person is on the other side of that car pushing the other direction, it's hard to move it. It becomes a little bit more difficult to move. And how do you get everybody pushing in the same direction? Alignment, that is more critical than any sort of offense, defense, all that stuff.
Coach, you again, another great visual. The whole team pushing that car up the hill. You're off to a great start at App State. The program is obviously in great hands. You've had 3 winning seasons under your leadership after 8 consecutive losing seasons prior to your arrival. I'm curious, especially in nowadays with the name, image, likeness stuff, and it seems like there's a little bit, the little more celebrity for the individual players and notoriety. How do you get everyone working together, pushing that car up the hill? How do you make it about a team?
Yeah, I think that the name, image, and likeness has been good. There's a lot of positives. The players deserve all that stuff. I just think at the end of the day, Andrew, at the end of the day, it goes back to relationships and communication. And, we talk about as a staff that we want to lead the league in player relationships. How do we out team people? But I think that as a coach, you've got to err on communication. And sometimes now kids and people communicate less because so much of it is behind a keyboard, the communication. I think that person to person or phone call communication is very, very important. And just, that relationship, just spending time and really having conversations about the vision, about the alignment, about the environment, and things like that. I don't want to act like it's easy. It's not. But I think that how you do it is the same way that's always been done, relationship and communications.
Coach, we're talking here in early November. It's the start of your season, the non-conference schedule. And for coaches, leaders who lead anything, lead companies, businesses, teams, starting something new, turning the page is a unique time for any group or team or organization. It could be a CEO starting a new year. It could be a leader joining a new company or a coach starting a new season. What are some of the things that you're doing in the early days of the season to make sure you're putting the team on really sound footing for the whole year?
Yeah, I think that it's very important, whether it's in business, whether it's in team setting, or like you talked about, whether it's a CEO. I think it's very, very important to have everybody in the organization first understand why an organization, a business, a team cannot be successful. And I think that you start there in the sense of, but before you, quote, win, you've got to understand what loses. Because everybody wants to win. Everybody wants to win. I want to win. I want to win. I want to win. I want to, everyone wants to run the most successful business. Let's start and let's get everybody really understanding why the business can't be successful. Why did that company down the road close? Let's talk about that first before our company goes bonkers and we blow it, out of the water and we're making all this quote money and things like that. Let's have everybody in this business and understand an organization within, understand why businesses and teams don't work. I think that's very critical because everybody wants to go in and just win. And I think before you do that, I really think you've got to understand what loses. And I think you've got to understand what's not successful. And then when you identify that and you talk about it, because guess what? Everybody knows the answers. Everybody knows the answers. The hardest part is doing it. But we do an exercise here where we go to the board. What does a loser act like, talk like, practice like, work like? And our team answers it. Each year there's different answers, but makes excuses. Not coachable, doesn't work, lazy, all the above, right? Not a good teammate. They know the answers. And so I always say, hey, I'm going to leave this up here until you walk by it every day and say, you know what? That's not me. That's not who we are. Because we've got to understand that before we just go win. Everybody wants to just go win. Well, let's just go win. Guess what? Winning's hard. Winning is hard. I guess, running a successful business is hard because there's elite competition. I think that's a critical step. I really do. And it puts things in perspective. It gives an understanding and a vision. And then later on, when we feel like everybody in the organization really understands that, then you can talk about what winning and being a successful business entails. All right, well, this is who we got to be. This is who you got to be. Because when you really study why a business or an organization is successful, there's common themes there. There's common behavior and themes. And there's no secret. I always tell our team, everybody talks about the secret of success. There's no secrets. We all know what to do. The hardest part is actually doing it. And I think getting everybody in your organization, your business, your team to understand why it's not successful is very, very important in that step.
That is so important, Coach. And everybody listening, right? I'm gonna do it today. I'm gonna, take all the goals that I have and I'm gonna write down what it would look like if I was not successful, the things that would make me fail. And it applies to your personal life, to your relationships, to business, to sport. It's so fascinating, Coach, to think about it from that standpoint. I've got to believe as we kind of wrap up our conversation here, I'm just thinking, you're a humble guy, Dustin, but I've got to believe that the way you lead by example, the way you carry yourself, the way you go about your business rubs off on the people around you. And at the start of our conversation, you talked about being a fan of the everybody pulls the tarp mindset and being a tarp puller. And I'm curious, you already alluded to the fact that, you didn't start in this profession on third base. You've grinded, you've worked really hard. As you think about some of the non-glamorous things, the nitty-gritty that people couldn't even imagine you doing to kind of get where you are, is there one thing that stands out that's just, if people could only see me doing this, they'd be shocked?
Yeah, I think there's so many examples, but I just try to feel like I'm just a normal guy, and I don't have all the answers. I would not be successful without our players and coaching staff and administration, and really my own family, my wife and kids. This is a profession that's impossible to do at home, and so there's a lot of people that go into it. I'm just a small part of it, but I don't know if there's an example that jumps out, because I just try to be normal, and I think that I will just say this. I take my job serious. This is a labor of love. It's a passion, but I don't take myself serious. And I think that, and so whether it's helping load the bus and getting, bags off at the airport or whatever it is, or carrying a case of water to the locker room, and I don't know, that there's some things that if I share, people maybe just not understand, because to me, it's just normal, and so, like I said, I take my job serious. I don't take myself serious. And I'm just a basketball coach that is trying to help kids reach their dreams and pull greatness out of them. But I think that I always tell coaches and stuff just because you're a head coach doesn't mean you have to change who you are. Basketball is what I do. It's not who I am. And, I take my daughter to school every morning. And so I don't know if there's a great example that would but I just try to be normal. I'm going to drive myself where I need to go. I can put in my own directions. I don't need, all that stuff. But there's been a lot of sacrifice. There's been some things I've missed out on. And there's been some things that, from a dad standpoint and husband standpoint that can bother me, that I could share that I've, missed out on. But there's also a lot of positives in the sense of my family and things getting to experience our players being mentors to them. I want my kids to look up to our players. But I think that, just be normal. And that's what I always tell myself, just be normal. Just be a normal guy. I'm going to say hello to the custodian and thank him for the work they do and things like that, because it's very important. And I don't take it for granted. There's a lot of special things about, being a coach, and you can't take it for granted.
Coach, this has just been a fantastic conversation. I've enjoyed and learned so much from you. And like you said, I think a great place to wrap up our conversation is be who you are, be yourself, and the rest takes care of itself. And Coach, I've really appreciated spending some time with you. I will be rooting for you and the App State team. I wish you nothing but continued success, and we'll have to check in again soon. All right, Coach, keep pulling the tarp.
Well, your podcasts are tremendous. I'm a subscriber, and I think that you do so much to help grow the profession, leadership, business, all the above. And so you're a big part of that. And I look forward to future podcast listening and learning from other people that you have on. And I just love the pull the tarp mentality. I think that's terrific. The attention to detail. No job is too big. No job is too small. I love that. Be normal. And thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Coach, keep pulling the tarp and best of luck this year. All right, Coach?
Thanks a lot.
Take care. Thank you for joining me this week. Be sure to subscribe in your favorite podcast app so you can catch all of our upcoming episodes. And if you are like me and want a world full of tarp pullers, then leave a review to help others find us. You can also follow me on Twitter at Andrew H. Moses. That's Andrew H. Moses. And be sure to sign up for my email newsletter at everybodypullsthetarp.com/newsletter. I'll share tips and insights to help you achieve maximum success and happiness. Today's a great day to pull the tarp. I am rooting for you. See you next time.